Welcome to Marriott MBA Today. I'm Melanie Lopez, and today we're starting a new series on personal finance, and I have with me Professor McQueen. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
So Professor McQueen is going to give us a brief overview of personal finance today. But first, let me ask you, before we get into it, we're at a faith-based institution, and so how does personal finance and investments really fit in?
Yeah, it seems a little dirty almost, doesn't it? Talking about getting rich at a church institution. I would say that personal finance, properly understood, is really an integral part of the gospel, that all things are spiritual. It's not that faith gets you rich. I don't believe that. I hate it when I hear that. But it's the other way around. If you're just self-reliant, if you're comfortable, if you're responsible for yourself and doing okay, then you can live your faith. You don't have to work on the Sabbath. You can be of service to others. You don't have to prostitute your values at work. And you can help other people, right? If you're self-reliant. You can really be a servant and be charitable. Maybe a good example of that's the parable of the Good Samaritan.
Okay.
You probably think of the parable of the Good Samaritan. It's all about helping your neighbor, even if they're the bad neighbor,
right.
the enemy, and love your neighbor. When I read that story, what I want, like the Good Samaritan, look, he had a donkey, he had extra oil, he had some money to pay the innkeeper, and he had credit. So maybe a little side ancillary note to that story is being self-reliant is a good thing. It's part of the gospel.
Okay, so he was able to help because he had all those things.
Yeah, I remember President Hinckley talking, even in conference once, about, get your financial house in order. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting comment from the prophet.
Yeah, so there's so many things in personal finance to talk about. There's taxes, there's investments, retirement. How do I think about all this? How do I organize it?
Yeah, when the prophet said, put your financial house in order, I actually sat down and tried to think, what does that mean? And I hired a student to draw a picture. So here's maybe a nice way to organize your thoughts. Down in the basic fundamentals, you ought to be living the gospel. You ought to be paying an honest tithe, being generous with your offerings. You ought to work towards self-sufficiency or self-reliance and have a good attitude. Well, by good attitude, I mean sometimes poor people get envious, and that's wrong. And other times rich people get proud. And that's another attitude that you want to get rid of. Then the next level up, I think people should be saving for retirement, participating in a 401k or an IRA program, saving for a rainy day. Sometimes bad things happen to us. Do a little, set aside some food storage, and then other investments for college education. And then the day-to-day living, the house itself. You ought to work towards home ownership. And then you ought to have a budget, a plan. I'm not big on giant personal finance plans, but at the McQueens, we just try to make saving really easy and automatic, and we make spending a little hard. I have some rules about spending. The last thing I mentioned is you need some protection for your assets, a nice roof, and that usually comes in the form of some basic health insurance. If you have kids, some life insurance. And then if things have, if you've been blessed and things are going well, maybe you ought to set up a will, and if you have kids, a will, and then maybe if you have assets, a trust. So there's a nice overview of different components that make up an orderly financial house.
Well, that's a really nice looking house, but I'm a graduate student. I have a lot of debt from now, and I have a family. And so when I graduate, where do I start? How do I get to that point?
Maybe a good place to start. Let's go a year ahead, and you have a salary in your work, and you've relocated. I'm going to assume you're paying an honest tithing and being generous with your fast offerings, have the appropriate attitude. Mm-hmm. Then the next place to start would be I would get out of consumer debt.
Okay.
I would participate in my company's retirement program, especially get the match.
Okay.
I would start saving for a rainy day, put some money a little away every month in a nice, safe, liquid investment in case bad things happen. Maybe even if you start out renting, but eventually work towards home ownership. And finally, I'd get some basic insurance in place. And as soon as you have kids, it's nice to have some life insurance so you can take care of them if bad things happen.
So when you talk about consumer debt, are you talking about my student loans? Or are you talking about credit cards? Or which one would you pay off first?
If you're going to tackle debt, which is a good idea, I'd probably start with the high interest debt. Maybe you have a credit card with a 21 or 18% interest. And then maybe go to the next highest interest. Maybe you owe money on a car, pay that off. And the last two would be student loans and home mortgage, because they're the lowest interest rates, and generally speaking, the interest is tax deductible. So yeah, as soon as you get out to work, get some insurance, participate in your matching program, set aside a little money, and then start paying off that debt. High interest rates first, and then work your way down.
So you just got to do little by little. I mean, I think it's a lot to think about at first, and I wish I could, get ahead of everything in a couple years, but maybe it'll take a little bit of time and little by little.
Pick a few things on the house and just go to work on them. Slowly and steadily, things will work out.
Okay. I'll remember your house when I graduate. Thank you so much for being here today, and please stay tuned for more of our personal finance series coming up.